You think honesty earns respect. You think explaining yourself proves you're reasonable, that transparency builds trust. You've been conditioned to believe that justification is maturity. But every time you open your mouth to defend a decision, clarify an intention, or prove your reasoning, you hand over a piece of your power to someone who never deserved access to it in the first place. And they take it, quietly, without you even noticing. The world is not a courtroom where the truth sets you free, it's a chessboard. And the moment you start explaining, you've confused yourself for a witness instead of a king. You've stepped down from your position and asked permission to exist in the space you already occupy. That's the fracture, that's where you lose. Most men walk through life as defendants, always ready with a reason, always prepared to justify. They think this makes them intelligent, articulate, measured. But what it really makes them is manageable, predictable, controllable, because once someone knows they can pull an explanation out of you, they own the frame. They ask the questions, you provide the answers, they judge, you perform. And in that exchange, the power dynamic is already decided. You were taught that communication solves problems, that explaining yourself is how mature adults resolve conflict. But no one told you that explanation is a form of submission, a request for approval, an admission that your position isn't solid unless someone else validates it. And validation always comes with conditions, conditions you didn't agree to, conditions that shrink you. Here's the promise: by the end of this, you'll understand why the most powerful people you've ever encountered rarely explain themselves, why they move through resistance without defense, why their silence carries more weight than your entire argument. You'll learn the laws that govern this, the psychology that makes it unshakable, and the exact moments where you've been bleeding authority without realizing it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Law 1: explanation is an invitation to negotiation. The moment you explain, you open a door, and people will walk through it, not because they're cruel, but because human beings are wired to probe for weakness, to test boundaries, to see how much they can reshape your reality to fit their comfort. Explanation signals that your decision is still under construction, that there's room for input, for objection, for revision. And once that door is open, closing it makes you look inconsistent, defensive, fragile. Machiavelli understood this. In The Prince, he makes it clear: a ruler who justifies his actions invites rebellion, not because the explanation is wrong, but because the act of explaining suggests the action could have been otherwise. It implies optionality. And optionality is the enemy of authority. Authority is singular, immovable. It does not ask, it does not convince, it simply is. Think about every time you've explained a boundary to someone who kept pushing. The explanation didn't satisfy them. It gave them material to argue with. They didn't walk away thinking, "Oh, now I understand." They walked away thinking, "There's a way to change this." Because your words became a map of your reasoning, and maps can be redrawn. Now think about the last time someone told you no and refused to elaborate. It was infuriating, wasn't it? But did you keep pushing? Probably not, because there was nothing to push against. No gaps to exploit, no logic to dismantle, just a wall, and walls don't negotiate. Law 2: the more you say, the less they hear. Over-explanation dilutes impact. Every additional word you use to justify yourself is another chance for misinterpretation, distraction, or dismissal. People don't process long explanations as clarity. They process them as insecurity, because confident people don't need paragraphs. They need sentences, sometimes just silence. Robert Greene writes extensively about this in the 48 Laws of Power. Law 4: always say less than necessary. The more you say, the more common you appear. The more you reveal, the more you give people to pick apart. Mystery, brevity, and finality command attention. Rambling invites contempt. Watch how this plays out in real interactions. Someone challenges your decision. You give them 3 reasons, they counter 1, you give 2 more, they counter again. Now you're in a loop. And the longer it goes, the weaker your original position looks. Not because it was wrong, but because you kept adding to it, like you weren't sure, like you needed them to agree. Contrast that with, "This is how it is." No follow-up, no breakdown, no defense. What can they do? Argue with a wall. They can try, but you're not participating. And without your participation, the argument dies. You didn't win by convincing them. You won by refusing to play. Law 3: silence is interpreted as strength. This is the law that flips everything. Most people fear silence. They think it makes them look cold, rude, uncooperative, so they fill it with explanations, justifications, apologies, assurances. But silence is not emptiness, it's weight, and people instinctively read weight as power. When you refuse to explain, people fill the silence with their own assumptions, and almost always those assumptions elevate you, because the human mind interprets withholding as status. The boss doesn't explain why the meeting was cancelled. The judge doesn't explain why he denied the motion. The king doesn't explain why he made the decree. And no one questions it, because their silence signals that they don't owe you access to their reasoning. And if they don't owe you that, they're above you. You felt this yourself. Someone refuses to explain their decision. Your mind races, you try to figure it out, you assign meaning, depth, calculation, you assume they're operating on a level you don't see, and that assumption shifts how you treat them. You become cautious, respectful, maybe even intimidated, not because they said anything powerful, but because they said nothing. That's the key. Power isn't always in what you assert, it's in what you withhold, and explanation is one of the most valuable things you can withhold. Law 4, every explanation is a transfer of frame. Frame is everything. It's who controls the reality of the interaction, who sets the terms, who decides what matters, and the person explaining is never the one holding the frame, because explanation is responsive, it's reactive. It's you adjusting to someone else's question, challenge, or discomfort, and the moment you adjust, they're leading. Think about job interviews. The candidate explains, the employer listens. Who has the power? Now think about the rare candidate who doesn't over-explain, who answers briefly and waits. The employer starts explaining why the role matters, why the company is great, why they should join. The frame flipped. And it flipped because one person stopped justifying their existence. This happens in relationships constantly. One person asks, "Why did you do that?" The other explains. Now the first person is the judge, the second is the defendant. The relationship just became a courtroom, and courtrooms don't have equal participants. They have authority and subjects. If you want equal footing, stop explaining, start existing. Machiavelli said it plainly, the one who acts decisively and without apology controls the narrative. The one who hesitates, justifies, or seeks consensus becomes subject to the narrative of others. You don't need to be cruel, you just need to be immovable. Law 5, people respect decisions, not reasons. No one actually cares why you did something. They care that you did it, and they care whether you'll hold to it. Reasons are just noise. Decisions are data. Decisions tell people who you are. Reasons tell people you're still figuring it out. Look at leaders people respect. They don't give TED Talks before every move. They make the move, then they let the results speak. Elon Musk doesn't explain why he's cutting staff. He cuts them. Then the company either thrives or it doesn't. The explanation is in the outcome, not in the press release. You see this in relationships too. The person who says, "I'm not doing that," and moves on is respected. The person who says, "I'm not doing that because of X, Y, Z, and here's why I feel this way and I hope you understand," is not. Because the second person is asking for permission. And once you ask for permission, you've given someone veto power over your life. Stop asking, stop justifying, start deciding, and let people adjust to your decisions instead of the other way around. Law 6, explanation invites manipulation. Every time you explain your reasoning, you hand someone the blueprint to change your mind. You're telling them exactly which levers to pull, which emotional buttons to press, which logical gaps to exploit. And smart people will use that against you, not always maliciously, but they will use it. You explain that you can't lend money because you're saving for something important. Now they know, if they can make their needs seem more urgent than your goal, they've got you. You explain that you're saying no to a project because you're overworked. Now they know, if they can minimize the workload or appeal to your guilt about teamwork, they've got you. You think you're being transparent, but you're being vulnerable, and vulnerability in the wrong context is just a wound someone can poke. This doesn't mean you lie, it means you don't give people the tools to dismantle you. A simple "I can't" is a complete sentence. It doesn't need a trailer, and it can't be argued with, because there's no claim to refute, just a boundary. Law 7, explanation is emotional labor you don't owe. This is the one that frees you. You are not responsible for making people comfortable with your choices. You are not obligated to LK them through your thought process so they can sleep at night. That's not cruelty, that's boundaries, and boundaries are the foundation of self-respect. Every time you explain yourself to someone who has no authority over you, you're doing unpaid emotional labor. You're managing their feelings, their confusion, their disappointment. And in doing so, you're training them to expect it, to demand it, to feel entitled to your internal world. But your internal world is not a public resource. Your reasoning, your motivations, your doubts, they're yours, and the people who deserve access to them are very few. Everyone else gets the decision, that's it. If they can't handle it, that's their work to do, not yours. This is where most men lose themselves. They become customer service agents for their own lives, always available to explain, to justify, to soothe. And in the process they become exhausted, resentful, shapeless, because they've spent so much energy managing other people's perceptions that they've lost touch with their own. Reclaim that energy, stop explaining, stop performing, start existing. Law 8, the powerful are comfortable with disapproval. This is the wall most people can't climb. They know they shouldn't explain, they know silence is stronger, but they can't handle the tension, the disapproval, the possibility that someone will think poorly of them, so they explain anyway. and in doing so, they reveal that approval matters more than integrity. Powerful people have made peace with being misunderstood, with being disliked, with being judged, not because they're sociopaths, but because they know that universal approval is the price of mediocrity. If everyone agrees with you, you haven't made a real decision, you've just echoed the consensus. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, not because fear is noble, but because love is conditional, and conditions make you negotiable. Fear, respect, or simple indifference, these are stable, they don't require your constant validation. The moment you stop needing people to understand you, you become immune to their leverage, and that immunity is freedom, real freedom, not the motivational poster kind, the kind that lets you move through the world without permission. Law 9, non-explanation is a filter. Here's the hidden benefit. When you stop explaining yourself, you filter out the people who were never aligned with you in the first place. The ones who needed convincing were never on your side. They were on the side of their comfort, and your job isn't to make them comfortable. It's to move forward with people who don't need a dissertation to respect your direction. The right people don't need explanations. They see your decision and either align or step aside. No drama, no negotiation, just clarity. And clarity is the soil where real relationships grow, not the performance-based, explanation-dependent ones, the ones built on mutual respect for autonomy. When you explain endlessly, you attract people who need you to be small, manageable, convincible. When you stop, you attract people who respect boundaries, who value decisiveness, who don't need their hand held through your every move. This is not isolation, this is curation. Law 10, explanation becomes a habit that weakens you. The more you explain, the more you train yourself to seek validation. It becomes automatic. Someone raises an eyebrow and you're already mid-sentence, justifying something that needed no justification. This is conditioning, and it's dangerous, because over time you stop making decisions based on what you want and start making them based on what you can defend. You avoid the bold move because you can't explain it. You take the safe route because it's easier to justify. You shrink your ambitions to fit inside the boundaries of what others will approve. And that's not strategy, that's surrender. Breaking the habit is uncomfortable. You'll feel rude, cold, withholding, but that discomfort is just your old programming resisting. Push through it, practice the pause, practice the non-answer, practice the decision without the defense, and watch how quickly people adjust. They'll stop asking, they'll stop pushing, because they'll learn that you're not a negotiation, you're a fact. Law 11, mystery commands attention. People are drawn to what they don't fully understand. When you explain everything, you remove the mystery. You become predictable, flat, easy to categorize and dismiss. But when you withhold explanation, you become layered, interesting. People start paying closer attention, not because you're performing, but because you're not giving them the full picture, and humans are wired to complete incomplete patterns. This is why the most magnetic people in any room are the ones who say the least. They don't overshare, they don't fill every silence with their thoughts, they let people wonder, and in that wondering, People assign them depth, intelligence, control. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. The perception is real, and perception is power. Use this not as manipulation, but as self-preservation. The less you give people, the more they respect what you do give. The less you explain, the more weight your words carry when you do speak. Scarcity creates value, even in communication. Law 12, non-explanation is a test of self-trust. If you can't hold a position without explaining it, you don't fully trust it. That's the truth most people avoid. The compulsion to explain is often just doubt disguised as courtesy. You're not really helping them understand, you're convincing yourself, and that's the weakness. Because if you need to convince yourself, the decision was never solid. Powerful people decide, then commit. They don't deliberate publicly, they don't workshop their choices with every person who asks. They trust their judgment enough to let it stand on its own. And that trust is what others feel. It's why they follow, why they defer, not because the decision is perfect, but because the person behind it is unshaken. Build that trust, make decisions from a centered place, then let them exist without defense. If they're wrong, you'll adjust, but you'll adjust on your terms, not because someone talked you out of your position. Law 13, the only explanation you owe is to yourself. At the end of the day, you answer to one person, you, and if you can look yourself in the mirror and know why you did what you did, that's enough. Everyone else is external noise. They don't live your life, they don't carry your consequences, they don't wake up in your head every morning. So why are you giving them editorial control over your choices? This is the shift from external validation to internal alignment, from performing for an audience to operating from principle. It's not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It's about becoming sovereign, about recognizing that your life is not a group project. It's It's a solo journey with occasional companions, and those companions either respect your direction or they don't, but they don't get to rewrite it. When you live this way, something strange happens. People respect you more, they test you less. They stop asking for explanations because they sense there's nothing to negotiate. And in that space, real relationships form, the kind built on respect, not compliance, the kind where you're not constantly defending your existence. You've been taught that communication is connection, that explaining yourself is how you build trust, but trust isn't built through explanation, it's built through consistency, through honoring your word, through showing up as the same person with the same boundaries regardless of who's asking you to bend. The world doesn't respect people who explain, it respects people who decide. And the distance between those two is the distance between being a subject and being a force. You've been a subject long enough, always adjusting, always justifying, always asking permission to take up space. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince for people who needed approval. He wrote it for people who understood that power is taken, not given. That respect is commanded, not earned through performance. That the throne belongs to the one who sits in it without apology, not because they're cruel, but because they're clear. So here's the contract, the initiation, the line you cross. Stop explaining yourself to people who haven't earned access to your reasoning. Stop defending decisions that don't require defense. Stop trading your authority for the temporary comfort of being understood, because being understood is optional, being respected is not. Say less, decide more, hold your ground, and let the world adjust to you instead of spending your life adjusting to it. Power is not lost in the decision, it's lost in the explanation, and you've explained enough.